Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to Saturday morning Hodgepodge, or my Saturday Hodgepodge. I think it's like the 11th one of these I've done. Beautiful day here on the Texas Gulf Coast region. Should be a nice cool afternoon. Thinking about going out and doing some fishing. I haven't done that for a while. My fishing channel has been neglected by me because the cold weather and the bad fishing for me has kind of put me off. Want to do a couple things in my Hodgepodge today. First, Nonfiction November check-in to kind of let you know where I am on that nonfiction TBR. I finished Zen, the Art of Archery by Eugene Herrigel, which was a reread for me. This is a book that I bought as a part of a class that I took as an undergraduate. That's why it's so crappy and beat up. And that class was on Eastern political thought. And I think, as I said earlier, I hated the class, but the book selection was really interesting, and that's gotten me thinking about my reading in terms of Buddhism, and I may do a video about that for next week. I also finished the history book that my dad sent me, Flames and Vengeance, the East Texas Fires and the Presidential Election of 1860. This had some information in it about the lead up to the vote for secession in Texas, in East Texas, and kind of a spasm of paranoid violence on the part of white Southerners or white Texans who supported slavery before the 1860 election. To be honest with you, as a work of history, to me, it was a little bit disappointing. And maybe this is me kind of as a history snob, and Peg from the history shelf can set me straight on this if she wants to. But it's always a little bit disappointing to me when I pick up what is a fairly small work of history published by a professor and printed by a local press that probably doesn't get much attention. It's a little disappointing to me when I pick that up, and that book is based entirely on secondary sources. That there are, I don't think there's a single primary source cited in this book, and yet it purports to tell the story about how events that took place in East Texas before the 1860 election spread paranoia about abolitionists spreading slave revolts and things like that. And mostly what it is just a rehash of the politics leading up to the 1860 election and afterwards. And there wasn't a lot of information there I didn't know. Most of it was just, like I said, going back through some stuff that you can find anywhere. It read like this professor's lecture notes about Stephen Douglas and the 1860 election and other things, and so it was a little bit disappointing, but I did learn something from it, which is good. And I'm currently almost finished with The Lonely City by Olivia Lang, which I'm enjoying very much, and I may actually do a book review on it, even though I think this is a pretty well covered book on BookTube, so I may not. The reading's been going a little bit slower for me this week, and this is disappointing because research paper Armageddon's happening on Monday, where I'll get those 155 research papers written by my 17-year-old high school juniors, and have to try to get those all read and graded by somewhere around December the 11th, which takes up a lot of my time. But I'm disappointed that my reading slowed down, and I think it's just that I'm just tired, and I fall asleep every day. When I get home from school, I take a nap, and then I'm groggy, and I don't necessarily want to read. Another thing I wanted to address is that I've kind of fallen, I think, into the traditional BookTube trap, even though I've been on BookTube for more than a year. It just seems to me that just recently I've kind of gone crazy with buying books, and that all of a sudden I have all these books laying around on my desk, which I won't show you because my desk is just an absolute messy nightmare. All these books laying around my desk, which I bought, a whole, stack of books that I bought at a used bookstore. I got a Fitzcarraldo edition of Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead recently. I put in yet another Amazon order because I found kind of a trove of Balzac books that I didn't own yet, and I'm kind of running out of Honoré de Balzac. I'm down to just 2 titles on my shelf that I haven't read, so I picked up some more of those. And it just occurs to me that I did all that work, and I have a video about rearranging my shelves, and I think that kind of led me into this trap. I rearranged my shelves, and all of a sudden I realized maybe I have more room for books than I thought I did, and so I just apparently went out and went crazy buying books. But in that book buying, something came up, and I'm just kind of interested in your experience with this. But oftentimes, for various reasons, when I'm on Amazon shopping for books, I find books, paperback books that are really cheap, and I order them, and it's only after they come that I realize that they're print-on-demand books that are copies of classics that I guess publishers just have a file on, and when an order comes in, I guess they just print it. And those books are of various quality. So one of the Balzac books I got in this round from Amazon is Colonel Chabert. And this book, and it's what most print-on-demand books will tell you, where it was printed and when. This book was printed on November the 13th, and it's November the 16th. So literally, this book is hot off the presses, and it kind of brings up an issue that I sometimes have with these print-on-demand books, particularly as they involve classics. Not necessarily print-on-demand books that are self-published by authors who appear on BookTube and other places, but these classic volumes oftentimes are really hit or miss on the quality. So for instance, in this one of the things I actually like is how big the print is. My old eyeballs are going to appreciate that. But notice how the pagination, it leaves all this space at the bottom, which makes me feel like I'm being, kind of taken advantage of, that they made it seem longer by making the print. Hello, Zelda. Zelda doesn't like this edition of the book either. That they're making the book longer by printing it on so many pages in such a big font. And also there are places where the sentences don't work out. Like on this page, the word man from the previous page appears at the top of this page. And so sometimes the books are fairly slipshod in their printing. One of the worst I have is another Balzac novel I bought called The Chouans, which is actually one of Balzac's first works. And essentially this looks like it was literally printed on a 1980s dot matrix printer. I don't know if you can see that print, but it's the worst print imaginable. It looks like the printout of a computer code. And to make matters worse, there are no page numbers. And I don't know if you saw my video where I said I'm obsessive about knowing how close I am to the end of a book. With no page numbers, that becomes really difficult. So while I have this book on my shelf, and it was printed by some publishing company I can't read in California, well, I have this book on my shelf. I don't think I'll ever read it because A, I don't think I can make my eyes focus on that tiny faded print, and B, no page numbers really drives me crazy. My other print-on-demand book was a copy of Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy, which I read as a part of Inktober. And this book had some issues with spacing and things like that too, and it's really big, but overall I was pleased with this one. So I'm just kind of curious, what your experience with print-on-demand books like this are. And these would be print-on-demand copies of classics. And if you've had a bad experience like I did with the Chouans, or if you've had kind of a disappointing looking book like this one from Colonel Chabert, and those of you who are kind of book version of your book obsessive about the cover and about the match, the way they look, will say, well, that's what you get for buying the cheapest possible books. Fair enough. I guess I'm one of those people who thinks that just because my copy of the book was cheap doesn't mean it shouldn't be a good copy of the book. Hang on, my dogs. Anyway, like I said, kind of curious if you've had the same experience with print-on-demand books, or if you've sworn off of those books or not. I also want to do some really quick shout-outs today. When I did my nonfiction on BookTube tag, I left out two very important nonfiction booktubers who are just great, and I want to make sure I shouted them out. Again, this is one of those situations where I'm pretty sure if you're following me, you're following them, but they are great nonfiction booktubers. And so the first one is Seriella, Alba over at Seriella. Her channel is great. Alba is so fierce. There are very few people on BookTube who I'm more personally impressed with than Alba, and I have a feeling that if I met her, I'd be intimidated by her knowledge, by her passion, by her strength. But she reads a lot of nonfiction, a lot of it related to Puerto Rico, because she's very passionate about Puerto Rico and her heritage there and what's going on in Puerto Rico and what has gone on in Puerto Rico. But she reads a lot of other nonfiction as well, so I want to recommend her channel. Sorry I left you out. And also Heidi at My Reading Life. I think Heidi probably reads more nonfiction than most people on BookTube, and as a matter of fact, she did like a top 50 BookTube, a top 50 nonfiction book video, which was just really great, and I thought she does a great job, and she has lots of great nonfiction recommendations. So I just want to make sure I mentioned her, and if you haven't subscribed to either one of their channels, I'll link them down below. And as always, I like to link to new channels that I found and do a shout out for them. So my new channel that I found, and I'm sorry I can't remember whose video I saw this channel recommended on. It might have been on Bookwanting's channel. But the name of and I'll put Bookwanting's channel, link to his channel down below too. His name is Brian, like me. But I also wanted to link to this channel. It's called The Pearl Review. And these are great reviews that I can't remember her name, I'm sorry, that the person who does this channel does. Just great reviews, concise, insightful, well organized, and I just think really brilliant reviews. So go check out the Pearl Review as well. Like I said, I'll leave a link to the channel down below. Anyway, looking forward to a good Saturday of fishing and hanging out with my family and hopefully finishing The Lonely City. Hope you're having a good Saturday already and looking forward to a good weekend. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below. As always, thank you for watching.